Words when they aren't words. Tested through experiments. Toyish books. Clearly, I'm not a poet, and while I do use haikus as test subjects, my project is not about poetry or writing. I'm investigating the word as an object. I was curious around the idea of a word and what a word is besides how we typically use it. This isn't an exclusive list of all the ways that a word exists, but these are the 6 lenses that I conducted my research through: the visual, the literal meaning, the sound, the physical relation, the mouth, and the experience. My curiosity around those lenses guided my investigations, and my process was mostly iterative. I would start with one haiku, and each experiment transmutated that haiku into a new result, which I then used for my other future experiments. As a way to help viewers connect with these experiments, I designed a collection of uniquely constructed exploratory books that reflect or are inspired by these experiments. While my experiments explore the alternative possibilities of a word, these unconventional frameworks of these books explore alternative possibilities of a book, new opportunities for how a book and a page and a word can be read. I know that poetry is generally difficult to understand, but some of these haikus will extra not make sense. I am intentionally employing this idea of nonsense to obfuscate the meaning of the poem and to denounce the need to understand, and instead to focus on these other aspects of the word. When I was searching for a haiku to use, this particular one had many different English versions. So to compound this variability in the translation, I put the haiku into a loop, translating it back and forth between English and Japanese, using different translators across each step until the haiku was different and the meaning was completely different. I designed this book to capture the ideas behind this mistranslation chain. Each page is a step in the process, one translator as labeled on the binding of the page. Each page features the input and the output, which is a window to the next translation. Let's play a game. This experiment was inspired by the idea of competing conversations and how 2 haikus would compete for space on a page. As each haiku takes turns placing one of its words, they create an entirely new haiku out of their interaction. I asked people to read this new haiku.
I write, erase, rewrite as a frog.
And in the interest of competing conversations, I created a new haiku performance with 2 of these readings, playing over each other.
I write, erase
again, and
as a frog,
then
erase again, and then
each of which I used as input of future experiments. This experiment's book is kind of like a shuffling deck of cards, with one haiku bound on the left and the other haiku bound on the right, and the pages overlapping, interweaving the haikus together in the middle. Every time the book is read, it becomes a different story, based on how the pages of the 2 opposing haikus collide. The next experiment took the previous game and amplified the systems of interaction and movement, and removed the human consciousness and strategy. I filled the arena with the haiku and let these little bug toys run around and animate the interactions between the words and other words and objects. This game results in a big rice pudding of words, so I went back in and tried to rediscover the meaning in it by framing and unmixing the words of the original haiku. For this book, which I have affectionately named the Taco Book, I aligned the vertical axes of these reframed words with the gutter. The entropy of the experiment reflects in the variable orientation of these pages, with the corners of each page poking out in all directions, it will either irritate you or entertain you trying to figure out how to turn to the next page. After reframing the words, I tried to re-inject more dimension because I was concerned with the interaction of words and space. So I printed and folded them into a three-dimensional architecture. This book gives these framed words that same dimension, attributing the book to be more of a 3D object rather than a set of flat pages. It takes up space and it has its own architecture. Sound is a way that spoken words exist in physical space. This experiment is kind of like that game Telephone, except this time I used my actual telephone. I played a clip of the 2 simultaneous readings of the haiku into my phone's dictation tool, and this is what my phone heard. Here the transmutation happens around individual syllables, and I did this 50 times and never did the computer hear the same thing twice. In this spreadsheet, I broke down all these fun new haikus from the transmutation. You can match up some of the homophonic words to track how the computer is interpreting the sounds. My favorite new haiku is the one about the punk-ass frog. While a hand writes the word, the mouth in a way writes the phonics of the word. This is more about trying to capture the space of the mouth as it generates a word. And this is what my mouth looks like while I'm speaking this haiku. I asked others to try to read the haiku based off of this physical manifestation of the words. This book has no text, but each page is a single sound, and consecutive pages accumulate to constitute words. Oh, and this book has lips, so it can speak the haiku and encourage extra interaction with the reader. This experiment was inspired by my interaction with some of my haiku performers. It seemed like they were actually enjoying what they were reading. So I focused on the promoting of the fun of reading aloud a simple sentence that you don't even know what it means. I took the clip of the 2 competing haiku readings and overlapped them, zippering the haiku into itself based off of the timing each word was spoken. When people read this, as the new haiku seemingly flows in and out of English, their voices would change, they would put on accents, and they would sometimes giggle.
Aten po sinetint pond, the sound of the bird say go hunden poof, pop pyoppy blossoms water.
All in all, I don't think any single book is a revelation, but they do work together as a collection of these booklet toys. Each book is a surprise, almost a puzzle, and as readers explore how to read each book, I hope that they question conventions around how we communicate with words, and even what words can be when we aren't using them to communicate. And hopefully they have a little bit of fun as well. After this year of thesis, I still feel inspired to further explore this idea of nonsense, which for me also feels connected to my earlier thesis investigations of non-perfection. I want to keep the same sense of exploration and this ability to question things by making. With my process this year, because it's been so internal and conceptual, following my own curiosities, I realize how important it is to give other people an entry point and to provide a design object or an artifact to ground them in the wanderings of my mind. And of course, I still want to keep a sense of playfulness in my design. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing your feedback.